Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Kareem and on this channel we talk about books and music. I also have an Instagram page where I post reviews of movies and TV shows and monthly music wrap-ups. So make sure you follow my page if this is something that might interest you. Today's video is going to be my February wrap-up. So I'm going to talk about the 8 books that I read in the month of February. Technically I read 7 because one of them is a DNF. So I'm going to start with the book that I DNF'd, and that's Les 5 blessures qui empêchent d'être soi-même by Lise Bourbeau. In English I think it is called Heal Your Wounds and Find Your True Self. So this is a self-help book, and the main idea is that there are 5 types of wounds that you can suffer from as a child, and it explains the different effects that each wound can have on you as you become an adult. So I thought that concept was very interesting. I was able to reflect on some things in my personal life, but overall I feel like this book lacked nuance and it didn't capture the complexities of human beings, human experiences, and human emotions, and it was just dangerously simplistic. If you've read this book and it helped you deal with some personal issues, then I'm very happy for you, but for me personally I just felt like it was making dangerous conclusions and I just had to put it down. The first book that I actually read in the month of February is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I picked up this book because it was Elias's favorite book of 2022 and he recommended reading it without knowing anything beforehand. So that's exactly what I did. I just bought it and I read it without reading the synopsis, and not to be dramatic, but I kind of wish I did now because it would have saved me a couple of hours of my life. I'm obviously in the minority here because this book won the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2021 and it is highly rated on Goodreads, but I did not enjoy this book one single bit. I am sure that this is some big metaphor and that there is a lot of symbolism in this book, but it all went above my head. Honestly, I don't even know how to explain what it is about. Basically, we follow our main character who doesn't remember anything from his past, and he lives in this labyrinth and he spends his days roaming the hallways, going from hall to hall and documenting his findings. So things like the shape of statues and something about tides. There are pages and pages filled with descriptions of these hallways and the statues, and I was just extremely bored. I was bored out of my mind. There's this mystery where you're trying to understand why he can't remember anything and who is this man that he keeps receiving orders from. But the thing is, it was too obvious, so I'm not sure this mystery was the point. Again, I'm sure that there's some symbolism here. This labyrinth and this man represented something, but it was just too abstract for me. Yeah, I would not recommend this book, to be honest. The next book that I read is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su-Lin Tan. Now this is a fantasy inspired by Chinese mythology, and we follow our main character who lives on the moon with her mother, unaware that her mother is actually the moon goddess and that she has been exiled by the celestial emperor for stealing an elixir. So her existence is also hidden from the empire, and her mother has always warned her to not use her magic so that the empire doesn't discover her existence. Until one day she does, obviously, otherwise the story would end here, and she is forced to escape and she decides to go on an adventure to try and save her mother. I really enjoyed reading this book. I loved the world building, I loved our main character. I immediately felt for her and I wanted her to succeed. Following her adventures was so much fun because there were so many and they were all different, but that's also one of my main caveats because the story felt a bit overstuffed. We go from adventure to adventure non-stop and conflicts arise and then are solved in a matter of pages. It just felt too easy sometimes. On top of that, there are time jumps that would span months and even years, during which we are told that she trained to become this great warrior or she killed this monster. But the thing is, I would have liked to read about those things. So the pacing was a bit uneven and I feel like there was enough content for 2 separate books. But overall, I had so much fun and I cannot wait to read the second book in this duology. And apparently it's now a trilogy and there's going to be a 3rd book. So we'll see. The next 2 books that I read are The Vanishing Stair and The Hand on the Wall, which are book 2 and 3 in the Truly Devious trilogy. So what is this series about? Basically, it is set in Ellingham Academy, which is this famous and private school where a kidnapping and a murder happened decades ago and the case was never solved. Fast forward to present day, we follow our main character Stevie Bell, who is obsessed with everything that is related to true crime, and she is accepted as a student at the academy, and she goes there in the hopes of solving the case. I read the first book, Truly Devious, last year and I enjoyed it. I thought the mystery was solid and suspenseful, but I found the characters a bit too stereotypical even for a young adult book. But I was still intrigued enough to continue the series. So I read the second book, Vanishing, Stair, and this is the true definition of a page turner. When I tell you that I couldn't put this book down, I mean I read the last 200 pages in one sitting. I thought the mystery was so engaging. We were finally starting to get some answers. The second I finished this book, I ordered the third book. And so then I read The Hand on the Wall, and it was a bit of a letdown. I felt like it took too long for the story to be about solving the mystery. The first half of the book was mostly about certain character relationships, and I didn't necessarily care about those, as I've said. And then when we finally got to the part where we finally get this big and final reveal, it was a bit underwhelming. I just felt like it was too easy, but overall I would highly recommend this series if you are into mysteries and thrillers. There are actually now a fourth and fifth book in the series in which we follow the same characters but with a different case to solve, and I actually already read the fourth book in March. I'm gonna reserve my thoughts for my March wrap up, and I do plan to continue with the fifth and any future books. And then I read City of Heavenly Fire, which is the sixth and final book in the Mortal Instruments series, which is part of the Shadowhunter universe. I read the first 5 books of the Mortal Instruments and the Infernal Devices trilogy last year, but then I felt like I needed to take a break, so I put this book off for a couple of months, and I finally picked it up in February, and I was very excited because obviously I wanted to know how this story was going to conclude, but also because it sets up the next series in this universe, which is the Dark Artifices, and I've heard incredible things about it. I had a lot of fun reading this book. I think Cassandra Clare was able to wrap up the story in a very nice way, even though I would have changed a couple of things, mainly the ending for one character, Simon. My main issue with the Mortal Instruments was always the two main characters, Clary and Jace. I still think they are insufferable, but it's the other characters, the secondary characters, that kept me engaged with this series. Overall, I feel like the second half of this series, so books 4, 5, and 6, were better than the first half. All the characters have become family at this point, the stakes are higher, the action is never ending. It all culminates into this final big battle that is just so satisfying. I just really love Cassandra Clare's style of writing. I think it is perfect for fantasy. I also really loved all the references to the Infernal Devices, and I'm so glad I read the books in order of publication, because otherwise those references wouldn't have hit the same. And also I really love the introduction of the new characters, which are going to be the main characters in the Dark Artifices. And then I read the Shadowhunters Codex, which is this companion book to the Mortal Instruments and the Shadowhunter books in general. It's kind of like a textbook that explains all the history and the laws of Shadowhunters, and it's annotated by Clary, Jace, and Simon. I didn't really read all of it. I skipped some parts that didn't interest me, and overall I feel like I could have done without it. I only read it because it came with the Mortal Instruments box set that I bought. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy it and read it. I don't think you learn anything interesting, really. And finally, the last book is The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida by Shihan Karunatilaka. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. This is the book that won the 2022 Booker Prize, and Jack Edwards said very nice things about this book, so I was very excited to pick it up. Basically, it is set in 1990s Sri Lanka, and we follow our main character Maali, who is a closeted war photographer and gambler. And at the beginning of the book, he wakes up in the afterlife, and he doesn't remember how he died or who killed him. So we follow him during 7 days as he tries to discover what happened to him, and also as he tries to lead 2 of his friends to a hidden box of pictures that could have a huge impact on the Sri Lankan conflict. Now, the concept of this book really drew me, and this historical and political dimension made me think that this book was going to be right up my alley. but sadly it didn't. My main issue with this book is the writing. I just felt like it was so dense and complicated to understand at times. On top of that, the Sri Lankan conflict is not very well explained. I was very lost and I didn't understand the political conflict and the different protagonists. So I feel like the book is not really accessible for a reader who has limited or no knowledge of the conflict. And I kept going back to the beginning of the book to remember who this character was and on whose side they were on. And it was just tiring and it was confusing and I just gave up at the end. I was intrigued by the mystery surrounding his death, but because I didn't understand the conflict really well and the different sides, the reveal did not hit as it should have. Yeah, I was disappointed. I understand why people would love this book, but for me personally it was a miss, and yeah, I wouldn't easily recommend it. Ooh. So these are the 8 books that I read in the month of February. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be the... Ooh, this is heavy. The Vanishing Stair. If you read or decide to read any of these books, please let me know in the comments what you thought. I would love to discuss. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.